The following program is an abridged audio version of the streaming video talk show A Wonderful Chaos. The hosts are Andy Chaleff and Bambos Dimitriou. The format is entirely casual, unscripted conversation. If you'd like to watch a live taping or participate with your comments in real time, subscribe to A Wonderful Chaos on YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, or Twitch.
What I started to see was that the brain, it's like, don't think of pink. Don't think of the pink elephant, that whole thing. If I tell you, don't think that you're unhappy, the thing is that I'm unhappy sticks in your brain. I'm trying not to be unhappy. I'm still managing, I'm not happy. So the trick that I realized was that, oh, I can fuck with my own brain. Like if I go from I'm unhappy and it's okay to I'm unhappy and it's fucking great. It sounds from an outside listener like this might be crazy, but if you feel in your body repeating it, you'll start to feel like, wow, it is fucking great. It'll start to settle in a way where you don't resist the thought, you don't manage it. And so the way that I see it is Taekwondo or whatever the Aikido is that I'm not going to resist. I'm going to take it and pull it so it shoves its way through and now it has no resistance anymore. And that's what I felt with the and it's fucking great.
It's a wonderful chaos. Beautifully random, messy and glorious.
Solo or tandem?
We work to find rest and fight to find peace. Both head and the heart.
Like a nephew and niece.
What are we doing here?
You mean listening to this show?
Where the more that you learn is the less that you know. Where the wounded are healed
and the atheists pray.
It's a wonderful chaos and we like it that way. It's a wonderful chaos and we like it that way. It's a wonderful chaos.
So good afternoon, everybody. This is like the moment we've all been waiting for. Today we have a special guest, very close to my heart, her husband, my mentor, my dear friend, Mr. Andy Chaleff, the author of these two wonderful books. If you hadn't read them yet, The Last Letter, and today we are going to be discussing The Wounded Healer and the concept of and it's fucking great. And Rani, where are we going to do this on?
On a wonderful chaos.
A wonderful chaos. So I think this is great. We get to spend time together, some quality time, and we get to interview your husband. Calling him your husband, that's like weird. But and we were kind of discussing how can we make his life a little bit more difficult on this show. Did you come up with anything?
Well, there is one thing that I was thinking about because some of you may notice that Andy is quite a chatterbox. And my idea was actually to see the other side of Andy where we can ask him questions and we give him 3 words to answer each question. He gets to use 3 words.
He's a chatterbox? What makes you say that?
The existence of this broadcast, how many is this? Is the 140th? That just started a few months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I really admire about him, he just says, I can talk about anything comfortably, just anything. And it's been really inspiring sitting next to him also, because I get to let go and surrender anything that I feel should or shouldn't be and just be. So that's been one of my my biggest lessons with him. You haven't read the book, have you?
Oh, you're not going to start.
You haven't read the book, again. Rani Putri. Am I giving you a hard time? I'm actually trying to be more in Andy's shoes, giving.
Yes. No, I'm just. The door is over there. Yeah, I can run away.
I'm holding you tight. So you haven't read the book, but obviously you have heard him read chapters or.
Yeah, actually, I heard the book before it became a book because during Andy's trip to the US that started or that inspired this book, he would call me from the road and he would tell me what happened. And so I got the raw version of what was written in the book.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was actually reading through the book today and I realized there's nothing to prepare, but I do want to start off with a small poem, which is the intro of the book, before we bring him on, and it's a poem from Rumi, and it's called The Guest House. Would you like to read it?
Yeah, this is actually a very beautiful
Poem.
The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
Wonderful. And without further ado, the man, the legend.
Andy Chaleff!
Look at that.
Look at that. So funny to be on this side. It seems so strange.
Yeah, we're in the same building, but your ground, your basement.
Yeah.
Nice. So, and it's fucking great. You've written the book. You have a lot of followers. We have the Facebook pages.
Yeah.
This book, Andy, was written on during your tour of The Last Letter, right?
Yeah, it was not intended to be a book per se, but it was a journal of what was happening on a daily basis. And since the experiences were so intense, it just became a book. It was just the natural progress. Yeah.
And what I know from you were actually recording this book on a phone.
Yeah. I recorded it. Actually, I shouldn't divulge this, but I had on my iPhone driving instructions going to my next location, and then I pressed record while doing that. So I was basically recording while getting navigation to wherever I was supposed to be driving to. And then I would speak out, and I spoke out very much like a book would be read. You know, like when you're trying to let your thoughts go out, you might just scatter, like say things without thought. I was really thinking as if I was writing a book. So I walked into the room, I saw these three characters, and then I really thoughtfully spoke to see if it might, turn into something that might be used, but I didn't know for sure. It was just intuition. And I think I promised Rani I wasn't going to write another book after the first one. So I don't know if I was even clear on that was going to happen or not.
Well, in a way, he's writing a third book now.
Yeah, the funny thing is that now actually I'm encouraging him to write the third book. I said to Andy, you need to write one more book and at least
the trilogy, 2
different languages where they're translated.
Yeah.
Today, I was going to Google the word enlightened because that is something that I project onto you, even though it's not something that you would ever say that you are.
Yeah.
But the way you live, the way I know you, like, there's such a consistency. Like, it's not only on the show, but the way you surf life, challenges, shit hits the storm. You're like this, like, Buddhist monk or intertwined with an Aikido master who just lets energy flow. Like, I've never seen you suffer to the point of really suffering. But even though I've seen you in the pain, there's always a love for that pain.
Yeah. So in one way, I have no issue with the word enlightenment, except when it gets projected on a person as if that's a state that's constant.
Yeah.
And I've always seen enlightenment as something that people are more enlightened than I am in certain areas, and then I'd be more enlightened than another person in certain areas. And when one is enlightened in a lot more areas than another person, then they would say, oh, wow, that person is enlightened. I always looked at the word enlightened as like more like a Latin breakdown of words, like light. So you make your world lighter. And I always wanted to have it like as a dish with mints, like literally like a mint that you would take. Because in a weird way, like it is lighter. Your life is lighter when you're clear around certain things that are, even the fact that confusion is always there and it's not a problem. That is a sense your life gets lighter. So one might say you're enlightened if you see that your head is always full of confusion. And then that's sort of a weird paradox, of course, but that's one way I say, wow, so you're enlightened if you sit there and say, I really don't know what the fuck is going on. it's weird to think, well, how could you be enlightened if that's what you say? But in that way, things are lighter. And that's how I've interpreted the word for my own use, let's say. Yeah.
I have to say for myself, in the past, I've read a lot of books on self-development, spirituality. And at some point, I just got really sick of it, because at some point I had to start doing the work instead of just taking it in my head. And it's around the time that we met that you started to mentor me and kind of establish boundaries in my life to not let me get away with shit. And it was done in such a loving way. And I felt that you are, like in old traditions, you have been the master who lovingly guides the student, and he'll do it in such a way where the outside world might project, what an asshole, like he's being so hard on him. But in fact, there's so much love there.
Yeah.
And when I was reading the first chapter, I felt I was reliving that journey with you. Like everything that we've gone through since 2014, it was kind of integrating.
Well, I mean, I don't see our journey very differently than my journey with Case, is that the difference would be you were a better student than I was. Because in a way, I resisted Case a lot, because there were parts of his behavior that I certainly couldn't. And he wasn't as loving as I am, as strong as others might see. Like Case was far from just loving. And so it made it even harder for me to fully receive his gifts, as it were, because I'd always have a little resistance to that part of him that I would almost say needed to be special. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
and Case, just to give context, was Andy's mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm actually in a very fortunate position because Andy and Case were not, officially my mentor, but I get to spend time a lot with them, and I learn by observing their behavior. So it's not by reading books, it's not by going to workshops, but I see from the people when they say certain things, what is it really that they do? And that is the best teacher, because it guides you how to behave yourself. So yeah, I didn't read Andy's book, but I'm with him most of the time, so I get to see what it really means to be wounded. What is it? What it really means to still be there for others and help others to heal from their own wound.
It's interesting because if there's in my experience, there's two people that spend. Maybe the two only people, quite honestly, that at least spend time with me directly, it would be the two of you, especially during the COVID time. So I find, like, as I grow and develop my own, whatever it is, practice in the world, that I see that I'm not trying to tell people how to live. I'm just trying to model my own behavior and allow people to learn from that. And I've seen that it's interesting is that things don't tend to grow as quickly, because it's almost like I don't need to convince anyone of anything. But it's interesting because if the two of you are there, it would be like, I'd be even curious to ask, what is it that you feel like you see in me that you'd want more of in yourselves? Like, what is it that I embody or do that you say, oh, I wish I had more of that?
To me, that's actually the word that we said earlier about enlightenment, because I see in you how life can be light despite all its problems, confusions, disasters. It can be light, and it can be, a peaceful place. I often say that the reason I'm with you, Andy, you're my husband, and the reason I'm with you is because I get to see what happiness looks like. You are someone who is genuinely happy in a lot of situations, and that is very, it's contagious.
And we're not talking about happy with a big fucking smile, yeehaw, but the kind of, you can feel it when you're like a magnet. For me, Andy, it's just your ability to see the two paradoxes and not take them seriously. And there's moments where I have to do a 1, 2, 3 step in myself. Not that you've taught me that, but because I'm around you all the time, that I'm like, oh, both exist.
Yeah.
And still part of me will take it seriously. It'll take me a bit more. I'll have to sit down and meditate and breathe to kind of just observe and not be in them. If one is true, so is the other. Like COVID, being mentored by you the last, how many months now? Since March, right?
Yeah.
I found peace with money. Like, seriously, I found peace with money, which was my whole life, I've struggled with not being able to be okay not having money. And funny enough, with the okayness, it's flowing slowly, but I'm also attracting kind of energy which feels supportive. Relationships, I might not be in a relationship, but you've made me so clear with what I want that I don't invite anymore the energy which will be an old pattern. And you've kind of hammered it into me in a way that's so clear that I know my full yes and my full no, and kind of the ability to hold them both lightly and still be able to explore, not to be fixed, which would have been the 180 degree swing.
Nice.
So in a way, when we started this podcast before the Wonderful Chaos, and I kept on telling we have to introduce you to the fucking world. You were like, if we do that, I'm going to attract a lot of people that I don't really need in my life. And here we are. Like, I literally told you that this book will be as good as The Power of Now.
Yeah.
These are the two books which really impacted my life. Yeah.
If the book sucked, then how would you have dealt with it? Because you also like me. So how do you distinguish between I like Andy and I like the book?
I can't read stuff if it's not congruent. Like I lose attention very quickly because I'm more emotionally intelligent than intellectual. So I need the words to really, in a way, the writer to be embodied, and that's what I get when I read this. Like, it's not heavy in my head. It's really, I can feel each part of and I cry. When I'm reading your book, I fucking cry. And it's just easy. It's small chapters. So to answer your question, if it was heady, I would have a harder time. If it was more concepts.
I think, and when you describe it, it's also how I wrote it, right? So I write so that one can have an experience, and then that experience allows them to think for themselves, as opposed to this is what you should do and how you should do it. I just that has a place. It's just not the place I'm at the moment in my own life.
Yeah, there was a comment from Bulalang also about what I said earlier, that I got the raw version of the book, and I can tell you that it was very, I don't know, I wouldn't call it intense, but the feeling that was there at that time, because you could hear it in Andy's voice about the pain, about the gratitude, about the release. It's there. And even the funny part, there is this story about when he acknowledged to be an author somewhere in the mountain. I don't know if that made it into the book actually, but that is the kind of the lightness of the whole thing. We still deal with human preconditions about our struggle and our challenges, but there is always part of it that is just funny and it's just absurd, and we can laugh about it. And I think it's very very nice.
As you talk, it dawns on me that when I write, I like to embody, and I think I just saw a message come in from Elizabeth Luntz, who's on the show tomorrow. She wrote, "You are the book," and it was interesting because when I just read that comment, it hit me that I can really identify with that, because the book is an image of me. When I write or when I share in it, I allowed myself to feel the strength and the comfort and the weakness equally, and I realized that. When I was writing, there's the inclination to maybe only share one of those things because it makes you more likable. It makes a group think you're either really smart or that you're someone I want to buy services from. And I think the joy that I had was almost dehumanizing myself in the books, is like, this is really the honest, these are the fuck ups. This is me pissing myself on the street, driving up the hill, like the honest experiences. There's something beautiful about sharing them without any shame or guilt or anything like that. And that's what I really, I enjoyed in my writing. Yeah.
Yeah. That chapter with the pissing, I laughed. It was so beautiful. Like, that was such an amazing example of, and it's fucking great.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in a way that before I set off on the journey, I really made a vow to myself that I will accept and love anything that happens. Like, I didn't do it outwardly, but I knew that the only way I would survive alone, 3 months driving, doing 60 sessions, was this. I just accepted whatever showed up as it was. And I think in a way, that level of acceptance, I don't know if I ever had that level of acceptance, because I would have always worked for an outcome. I would have desired that things would end up really nicely. Or if someone showed up and wasn't happy with the session, I would spend time with them and try to make it so that they felt better. But it was like a weird, like, wow, if they didn't like it, then that was what it was meant to be. And in a way, I think that acceptance made that people felt that much more comfortable, and then it created its own movement around it. Yeah.
I think that's something new that I heard, and quite beautiful, really, what you said, Andy, about even before it happened, you made a vow that you will love whatever comes out.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a mother giving birth to a child. However this child is going to be, I'm going to love it.
Wow.
Yeah. I think I had to do that, because when I got out of the shower and told you I was going to do the trip, like before it was even planned out, I don't know if you remember that moment. I just said, babe, I'm going to do 3 months. And, I started naming what my vision was. You took it totally seriously at the moment it came out. It wasn't like, you never said that's a dumb idea, or you're not going to, this won't work. You just said, I think you just probably waited for me to get over it or something. Like, this is just going to be one of his things that doesn't transpire, I guess. But I at that moment, I also realized, since I'm surrendering to knowing I'm going to start in Portland and end in Miami, what happens in between, I don't actually control. I just know that I intend to be in Miami on that date. And that mindset made it so that things evolved and flowed very effortlessly for me in the process. Yeah.
What did you have to say no during that journey?
The only time I had to say no was that one experience that I don't want to name, or just to go into location, but where I was in a situation where there was a discomfort between the husband and the wife, that I was involved in the middle. And when the husband got aggressive towards me, like I realized that I didn't need to make space for everything in my life. So, and there was, in a weird way, in maybe in a past self, I would have done my best to support and create connection again. And I think I really could have even worked it out. I could have taken enough space and created enough and self-sacrificed totally, so that all of the parties all felt heard and all felt seen. But I realized that actually I don't want to self-sacrifice for everyone in my life and then miss out on who I am. So part of the journey was also saying no to behavior that I didn't want in my environment, especially because I was so vulnerable after so many sessions. So that was a moment for me, just to say no. And then realize that there were consequences to that no, because I wasn't going to work with that client anymore for the rest of time, for sure. And there would be issues that came up. So I knew all of that was really what the consequence was, but I just didn't care. I was actually loving that I didn't have to solve everyone's issue in life. Yeah.
Would you say that self-sacrifice is the key word there, that you say no to self-sacrifice, or is it too simplistic?
That would maybe be too simplistic. I say no to excluding me. Like, I say no to not also including me. And I think in a lot of my life, from being raised by dad, who is really abusive, I spent a lot of my life caretaking around me to manage so things wouldn't go bad. Like that was a pattern from a very young version of me. So as I got older, like my value in life came from taking care of others. So my meaning came from taking care of others in a way as this sort of weird positive that came out of this, other thing. And my identity was like, oh, I can deal with all of these situations, as if dealing with the situations gave me like I'm a better coach or a better mentor, or as if like that was identified. And at some point it was like, also there's an Andy in there who just doesn't want to deal with that bullshit. So why should he have to? Like, it's that simple. There's just no need to put myself in uncomfortable situations to prove that I can deal with that. So the no was to excluding me. I will not let just Andy get ignored in the dynamic. So that was the no. Yeah.
It was really beautiful what you just shared. There's so much what I would call content. This is the part where Bambos wants to go back and watch this.
Well, it's also not all that dissimilar from my time in Esalen, where the woman projected onto me and she wanted to give me feedback, but she wasn't taking into account any of her feelings or vulnerability. So for me to tell her, no, I won't hear her feedback was big for me, because at some point I was like, oh, you know what? People need space. So on one side, it's kind of interesting. I'm doing 60 sessions in front of these groups and I'm crying every day and letting them write letters to loved ones and just creating space for people to connect and feel very grounded. And on the other side, I have other people who I might just meet along the way who would project onto me without thinking of their own baggage. And it was interesting is that I was saying no to a lot of that, where I'd normally leave space for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the weird thing is I love feedback, but I love feedback when it includes the individual's vulnerability. If it's just a reaction and then a projection where I have to take responsibility for another person's feelings, I'm over that. Like, take responsibility for your feelings. You can share them. I'd love to hear them, but don't hold me accountable for your feelings as if that's my issue. That's what I was saying no to, the trip. So that's interesting, because that was something new for me. I never told someone to go fuck themselves when they wanted to give me feedback and started blaming me for it. That was new.
Which is also the name of that chapter.
Yeah, exactly.
The way you could actually see that process unfolding for me is very beautiful. And that will be another thing that I'm still trying to learn from you. Like, to really see, oh, these are the mechanics which are happening and I don't have to take any responsibility here. This is not mine.
Yeah, that's insight.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because that insight would be the insight that allows me to behave in ways that other people wouldn't be able to behave, because that insight doesn't exist in them. So that goes back to where we began, where you'd say, oh, you're enlightened. And I'd say, in that aspect, I'm more enlightened than a lot of other people. Yeah. Like, I see the world as projection. So if I take the other person's projection seriously, now I'm a victim. I create myself as a victim of their projection onto me, where actually I can just laugh and say, wow, their brain is doing some weird shit. What's going on there? And then I stay in curiosity. And that's a really big shift in life, I have to say.
So we all know, you always say that you took this work from Peter Koenig, who took it from whoever.
Yeah.
And Peter Koenig had this beautiful "and it's okay," and then I remember you took it to "and it's really okay." Like you took it, like you enhanced it, and then you're like, "and it's fucking great." Can you talk a little bit about this process? Yeah,
that was like anything in life. If you're experimenting, you fuck it up sometimes before, and I think that was chapter, I don't know, we'll ask JC Barnett, but that's a chapter when I tried it too fast without thinking about the condition. So I was in Seattle and I asked the woman, hey, are you ready to say my daughter's a bitch and it's fucking great? And then she went off on me. Rightfully so. I was testing things without taking any of my own best practices into account. But the thing was what I started to see was that the brain it's like, don't think of pink, don't think of pink, don't think of the pink elephant, that whole thing. If I tell you, don't think that you're unhappy, don't think that you're unhappy, don't think you're unhappy, right? The thing is that I'm unhappy sticks in your brain. I'm trying not to be unhappy. So the one thing I was realizing, and it's okay, was that I'm still managing, I'm not happy. So the trick that I realized was that, oh, I can fuck with my own brain. Like if I go from I'm unhappy and it's okay to I'm unhappy and it's fucking great. It sounds like from an outside listener, like this might be crazy, but if you feel in your body repeating it, you'll start to feel like, wow, it is fucking great. It'll start to settle in a way where you don't resist the thought, you don't manage it. And then there's almost maybe tears, maybe a smile, but that thought doesn't define the person anymore. It doesn't control them because I'm resisting the negative. Because think about the negative. The negative has force. Now I'm resisting it. I don't want that thought in my head. And so the way that I see it is like you called it the Taekwondo or whatever, the Aikido, is that I'm not going to resist. I'm going to take it and pull it so it shoves its way through, and now it has no resistance anymore. And that's what I felt with the "and it's fucking great." And I also know there is a little bit of a graduation because it's hard to go from my mom was killed by a drunk driver and it's okay, right? Because even that is like, oh, wow, you can feel your heart reaching out to the person. And then you say, wow, my mom was killed by a drunk driver and it's fucking great, right? Like to an outside party that hears that, they'll say, God, this guy is horrible. He's totally out of sync. But if you can feel into it and sort of sense where that finds a place, and there's a little bit of laughter and a humor, it's like, wow, that thought doesn't define me in any way anymore.
Yeah,
and it might come up,
It's interesting, Andy, because as you probably know, I'm more rationally minded. So if things make sense to me, it makes sense. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So talking about feelings for me usually doesn't really go anywhere. But the way you explain it is actually, it makes sense, going from if you go from this range of negative, 0 and positive, using the I'm unhappy and it's okay, it's just getting you to the neutral space. And actually by forcing it to jump that step entirely, actually force you to see it differently. You are forced to see the world sideways. Yeah. You actually don't take that path because then you assume that path from I'm sick, I'm going to get better and I'm going to be happy. No, actually you are happy. And how do you see it? So it's really a mind fuck because you really have to see the world differently. All these things that we think are terrible things, that actually they can be great things. You just have to see it. Yeah. You really have to twist your brain. You really actually do not even take it step by step. No, just,
And there's a lot of practices that do that. Byron Katie has their 4 questions and the turnaround. So there's this thing, I think it's called coherence therapy. I haven't spoken to the man, but where you actually create sentences which are completely at odds with the feelings you're actually having in order to twist your brain into not falling into these reoccurring patterns. Because, when you get into people that are more scientific, they'll talk about neural pathways and they've created a link to a feeling and to the thought. And basically by twisting that, you've just created a different neural pathway. So you're not in this relentless loop of feeling terrible about something. Bolalang, who's with us, Bolalang has been a really great champion because even having that group, that only existed because on one of the shows, Bolalang said it. He said, we need to have a hashtag for this. And I thought, you want to put the word fucking in a hashtag? Like, where's that going to go? Like, as if, and there was a beauty in surrendering to that and just letting that be whatever it was meant to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And the group itself, right? People go in and I see that you've just let it be, like it's just evolving by itself.
Yeah.
And I know that you have the red card if someone tries to start coaching other people. I know there's a red card just to have that level of safety for people that are being vulnerable.
Yeah.
But for the rest, I just see that you just let it evolve.
Yeah, there's sometimes I'd be like, oh, that's on the edge. But I mean, in life, I think if you want to control things, then they get managed to non-existence. Like in some ways, you let it go, it grows, it'll have its hiccups, and part of that surrender is part of life. It's not easy always, but it is part of life. I mean, when we do our and it's fucking great workshops that I've been doing, I haven't really felt at home in those workshops because it's an hour and a half. I'm on this stupid Zoom call. I don't get to have the intimacy of seeing the people, feeling them, getting a sense of where they are during the talk. So in some ways, I feel like I'm flying blind. And then I just give out some random experience. I don't know how they're going to feel, or, you know, it could screw up their lives for all I know. And I'm not there to support it. So there's a lot of helplessness in that process. And yet I have just said, let's allow it to be, and we'll let it evolve and see what it becomes. Yeah.
5 years ago, we were sitting together in the front room.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit worried about you because it felt like your life was so complete. And you were telling me, like, you were like, I'm just existing. Like, it almost felt like in that, even 5 years ago, that you were almost like being okay with dying. And I know that's the thing that you always say, I'm getting ready to die. And in a way, I don't remember the words you used, but you said something like, when you're at this point in your life, you're trying to figure out how you can give or be of service or create something. And it's only a year later when you got married and you wrote the first book that I saw that moment kind of propelling you into where we are today.
Yeah.
So, and I saw that moment a little bit as a shower moment, by the way.
Yeah. I think I create space and then things drop in. Yeah. And I think that's one of the hardest things for people to do, is that they think they have to be doing something. And I sort of, in my better moments, I let things unfold. And if it doesn't feel like it's time, then I don't usually push it. I invited people into my life to help with the launch of the book and the publicity. And I saw that it wasn't kind of taking off, and I could have done more to do publishing or get on more shows. But I was like, you know what? That would be pushing beyond where I'm now feeling grounded. So I just let it be. Then, of course, the And It's Fucking Great group formed, and then that materials, and that was where I felt my energy move towards. So I actually am a big proponent of, if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. And then when it's meant to be, take it totally seriously and dedicate all your energy to it. And that was a little bit of the balance I felt in my life. Yeah.
Well, back to the living room moment. I saw that you allowed yourself to be in that discomfort, even though you didn't really talk about it as being discomfort. You kind of allowed to be there. I never saw you trying to make something or push it away or talk to people and let's do something. I just saw it. I just saw for a while that was a way of being for you. Yeah.
I always get frustrated when you share, this is where I am, and then people try to fill in the gap as if there's something that needs to change. Like, that's one of the, like, that arrogance that I often will talk about. Like, who are you to think that you know what's best for another person? Like, I never ceases to amaze me. Like, I always feel like I have to ask for permission to share what I think someone may find to be, better for them at any given moment. But with this, I didn't have any problem. In fact, I thought, wow, isn't it incredible? Somehow, whatever the universe is, it's not giving me any clues as to what it is that would feel right at this moment. And that didn't mean that I wasn't doing stuff. It just wasn't, it wasn't. And I've surrendered to that kind of universe feel. At the moment, I don't, I'm not feeling like, we've done a lot of the wonderful chaos. I don't know about the next book. I have feelings about it, but I'm not driven by it yet. I'm sort of I feel very open, maybe not all that dissimilar from 5 years ago. Yeah. When we sat on this, and I'm sort of okay with that. I'm sort of letting that evolve and feeling into it.
Yeah. So one of my from the book that I didn't read, that was a story that that resonated a lot with me. Because not only because I recognize the story, but also I think that was Andy when you went to this old people's home, right, and asked them to write love letters, even though they speak different languages. It made me realize how universal that is, how we are actually the same. A lot of us carries that same love to people in our lives, and the fact that these elderly people, when they write things, they often write about their own childhood. So they don't write about their children; they write about their own childhood.
Yeah,
it's
that surprised me.
That is also very profound to me. How much we are also a product of how we grew up, how we were raised, things that happen when we are still very innocent.
Yeah. When that was the last session, was in Florida at the retirement community, and when I was sitting there, that was there were people over 90, pushing 100 years old. So when they would talk that their letters were written to their mother or father, like for me, that was really, it was eye-opening, because earlier on the trip when I went to visit my own mom's cemetery where she was buried, like I thought to myself, well, it's 30 years and I still feel this well of pain. And then I even could feel the smidgen of judgment, like it's 30 years. Shouldn't I be over this by now? I mean, isn't it time? And then to see the 90-year-old people writing their letters to their parents, like it dawned on me then, I don't know where I ever got the idea that like suffering isn't just a different form over time. It just evolves to something different. It doesn't go away, or it may. I don't say it doesn't, but it just evolves to another form. So, yeah, that I found very beautiful. And the biggest thing, by the way, for the book was and I think it's probably all it dovetails into the whole A Wonderful Chaos, is that being there as a listener without needing to heal, support, fix anything is enough. And I don't see that embodied in as much as it's like, if this is the truth, it probably takes people till 40 or 50 to understand how true it is. Like from 20 to 30 and 30 to 35, we're still trying to fix people. Like I'm going to get myself better, and then I'm going to learn, and then I'm going to teach you all my tricks. It's a very like identity based. I need to prove something to the world. I need you to see that I can do this, and you can heal, and I can fix you. And like, there's that energy in the world. And I think what I started to move towards, which is a lot of surrender, is that there's nothing I can offer you outside of just being present and allowing you to heal in the shape and form that works for you. And that, of course, it's easy to say that because I went through all of my own healing, but those, the 20 to 35 or 40-year-old, those people are going to meet other people that need people like them. They need someone who can say, I can fix you. And then, you can fix me. I'll pay for your services. And then they outgrow them because they never can fix them, because the fixing was always something that they needed to do inside of themselves. Yeah. But it'll take them few iterations to get to the place where they're like, wow, just being there and love for another person is enough. And we're all suffering. So to pretend like you're not suffering and then make me think that I'm actually less because of that, fuck that. No, just we're suffering and I love you, and all I can do is be here with you in your suffering, and that's it.
Yeah, that's been a really big one, really big insight in my life. Where if I catch myself wanting to help someone, all of a sudden I allow myself to be, oh wow, I don't know what to say. I just don't know what to say, to be honest.
Yeah.
And just be with them.
And that's what I've discovered is the most powerful words, is I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
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 And it's fucking great.
Yeah. And it's fucking great. Before I set off on the journey, I really made a vow to myself that I will accept and love anything that happens. That mindset made it so that things evolved and flowed very effortlessly for me in the process.
What did you have to say no during that journey?
The only time I had to say no was that one experience. Like I realized that I didn't need to make space for everything in my life. And maybe in a past self, I would have done my best, self-sacrifice totally. But I realized that I don't want to self-sacrifice for everyone in my life and then miss out on who I am. Being raised by dad, who is really abusive, I spent a lot of my life caretaking around me to manage so things wouldn't go bad. So as I got older, my value in life came from taking care of others in a way as this sort of weird positive that came out of this other thing. And my identity was like, oh, I can deal with all of these situations, as if dealing with the situations gave me like I'm a better coach or a better mentor, or as if like that was identified. And at some point there's an Andy in there who just doesn't want to deal with that bullshit. I will not let Andy get ignored in the dynamic. So that was the no.
It's a wonderful chaos.